another relationship and application timeline, a case study showing you a recent partner visa that was granted for one of our clients, one of our couples, to give you an idea of the visa that was applied for, why we applied for that particular visa. Let's work through their relationship timeline, so understanding their milestones, what that couple had in place prior to the visa being submitted, and then how long the application took to process once it was submitted. So this is an interesting one. This is a prospective marriage visa application. So the other videos you might have seen are generally geared towards showing or demonstrating onshore partner visa applications, because typically speaking, that's the majority of the type of cases that we will handle. But that's on purpose, because typically if a couple are physically apart or live overseas but intend to come here quickly, we will likely look for a way to get the partner here sooner and then apply for an onshore application. So that's why you might see or find that the majority of our cases are onshore. It's because we have avoided offshore applications if we can. There's more information about the differences between on and onshore applications and why we try to avoid offshore applications in our partner visa secrets training. There's a link around this video to kind of dive into that content. I won't go into it here, but just suffice to say that we try to avoid offshore if we can. The context of this case, of this relationship, is that we didn't need to avoid an offshore application because the couple were together overseas. Were living together overseas. They knew they were going to be together whilst the visa was processing. There was no benefit in trying to get the applicant here on a tourist visa and apply onshore, because it didn't match their intentions. It didn't match their plans, because their plans were to be overseas for the foreseeable future. For the next year to two, they knew they were going to be overseas together. And that's why we decided to submit an offshore application. Now, if that's your scenario, the question then becomes not so much, do we try to apply onshore or offshore? The question becomes, which offshore visa should you be applying for? Because there's two ways. You can apply for the full 309-100, which is for couples that can demonstrate they're in a de facto relationship for 12 months, or in a married relationship when the visa is applied for. Or couples may decide to apply for a prospective marriage, a PMV, if they can demonstrate that they've met in person and intend to marry, okay, like these guys did, like this couple did. And I'll explain why. I'll explain why we decided to apply for a PMV in this case. What were the determining factors? So this application was granted on the 6th of December, 2022. The country of passport that the applicant had an Iraqi passport, which is really probably one of the highest risk passports you can have in terms of how long an application might be expected to take. You know, country of passport for overseas applications and where it's being assessed are very big factors in determining how long an application will take, because it really ties directly into background checking that happens for applicants. And that unfortunately can take a very long time depending where someone is coming from. And that's where, you know, where you come from or where your partner comes from really can prejudice, you know, how long an application takes. And that's just part of the process. But this is a good news story. This was a high risk applicant that was granted very quickly in 3.5 months, you know, a PMV, like I said. So approved 6th of December, application submitted 23rd of August, 2022. We received multiple requests for information, not unlikely and not surprising for someone with a high risk country of passport. Likely there would have been multiple police clearances requested and maybe a few other bits and pieces. But we received 3 RFIs, meaning had we not needed the RFIs, the application could have been finalized even faster, even sooner. But nonetheless, 3.5 months is still something to celebrate. So 3.5 months for this PMV. The couple met. So that's the processing time frame for a PMV Iraqi passport. Let's look at their relationship timeline now. This couple met in August 2019. Okay, so application submitted August 2022. These guys met in August 2019. So 3 months, 3 years, sorry. Prior to lodgement, these guys met. They went on their first date. A couple of days later, started dating exclusively. So the exclusive relationship commenced around October 2019. They got a pet 4 months later, roughly 4, 5, 6 months later. Went on a holiday in the middle of 2020. Started living together in July 2020. This is all overseas, offshore. Obtained a joint lease overseas. Engaged our services around then, mid 2020. No, sorry, that's a lie. Engaged our services 2 years later. Okay, so the timeline's a bit off. My apologies. It's not in chronological order, but they engaged our services in June 2020. We submitted the application a couple of months later. Back to their relationship. Started pooling finances in August 2020. engaged in December 2021, nominated each other as beneficiaries to their super policies in April 2022, and organized wills in July 2022. Okay, so on paper, the question might be, why wouldn't we have just applied for a full 309-100 on the basis of this couple being in a de facto relationship at the time of application? Given the length of time they had been living together for, engaged, they very likely could have met the requirements. However, what's not, I suppose, detailed in this timeline is the actual facts of the couple in terms of, you can have good facts, and this is a couple that would represent as having good facts. They present good facts. The problem, though, is that they struggled to prove them because of where they lived. They lived in a particular country overseas where they weren't able to get joint accounts, until a certain point. They weren't able to accumulate a lot of proof of cohabitation because of the country they were in. They weren't able to get both partners on the lease. So they face practical difficulties in proving the facts that they have. And that's something that I talk about in the partner visa secrets training. There's two components to preparing your partner visa. It's improving your facts, which this couple did. They improved their facts. But the other equally important half to this is proving them. You need to be able to prove the facts that you're claiming depending on the visa you're applying for. And unfortunately, this couple felt, and so did we after we started reviewing their documentation, that we might face difficulties in proving their de facto relationship. But the couple were engaged. They knew they were going to be together. They knew they wanted to marry. And that's where a prospective marriage visa really fit. It's a much lower evidentiary burden. We don't need to demonstrate cohabitation. We don't need to demonstrate financial pooling. So all those pressures around trying to prove de facto were no longer in place for this couple. It was just proving that they were together. So we would still use all the same documentation to prove that they were together in an exclusive relationship, were engaged, and were planning to marry. That's the core requirement of a PMV. And it's much easier to do that than prove a couple are cohabitating, living like a de facto couple where you can't get documents to prove it. So that's the full context here of this case and why a 300 was granted. Now, the steps from here really is, now that they've got the 300, the couple will come to Australia, they will marry, and then will apply for the 820, or they may want to do it themselves, maybe using our VZ coaching program. They might want to apply for their own 820 onshore as a married couple then, okay? And they'll be able to use Australian-based cohabitation documentation, Australian joint accounts, Australian driver's licenses. They'll be able to accumulate Australian-issued evidence that then proves the four pillars, the four areas of the relationship. And again, I talk about the four pillars in the Partner Visa Secrets training. And I explain why the four pillars really aren't relevant to a PMV. They are indirectly, but not as directly as a full 309, which was the alternative option for this couple. So, this is an interesting case, I will say, and hopefully it gives you an idea of, comparing the options, particularly for offshore couples, and understanding that there might be more than one way to approach it. It's really about your risk appetite, risk mitigation, and understanding the steps and the pros and cons of all these options. And we do talk about a lot of that, again, in the Partner Visa Secrets training, which is exclusively available to you and people inside this group. So please go do watch that training. For any couple that would like to work with our team, either for us to coach them and teach them how to prepare an application like this, we do have our VZ software and coaching package, which is available on our site. There's more information there. Or, of course, there's our full representation where we'll handle the whole process for you from start until decision, like these guys. That's it from me, Martin from Self Migration. I hope this video has helped as always, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.